What's up, everybody? Hey, appreciate y'all being here. Welcome to my workshop. I'm calling The World Through Orange-Colored Glasses. I'm Katie the Russian. Some of you may know me as the girl that sells passports because that's what I do. I help Bitcoiners to obtain second citizenship or residency for your benefit. But today's workshop won't be about this, although I'm sure I will bring it up at some point. This is a workshop, so I'm just going to set the stage in the next 15, 20 minutes, and then I want a dialogue. All right, the world through orange-colored glasses. You are here at this conference, so I know you have already swallowed your orange pill and already put on those orange glasses. Looks good on y'all. And you might look at me and say, well, Katie, nice orange dress. It's actually white. It's just your glasses. So what are orange glasses? Those are not those rose-tinted glasses with unicorns and flowers. Those are orange glasses. They're bold, curious, feisty. But once you put them on, all those rules that you've been handed throughout life kind of disappear and no longer make sense. So you start to reevaluate one thing after another. And for a while, it all feels discouraging because you're going through anger. You are angry at those who handed you those rules throughout life. You are angry at yourself for not seeing it earlier. And now you're also angry at your inability to give those glasses to others, to wake those others up. But the great things about Bitcoin, that Bitcoin has come with a set of precise rules, right? Satoshi left us the manual, aka white paper. He left us the code. And while over time, the way we pursue Bitcoin has changed, it's still the decentralized peer-to-peer electronic cash network, right? Unfortunately, we don't have the same manual when it comes to other areas of your life. We don't have lines of code to solve those issues either. But what we do have is our orange glasses, a set of values and principles that Bitcoin has taught us along the way. So in this workshop, I wanted to try and build the framework of making decisions for all other areas of your life based on those Bitcoin principles. So in order to do so together, we're going to take those orange glasses and point them at things like health, education, your security, your community. So let's see where these questions take us. So, okay, let's start with a little bit crash course. Right. So what are the things that brought us to Bitcoin or Bitcoin has taught us? The first thing that I want to look into is skepticism. Like that's the very first thing you need to arrive here. You need to start questioning things. So you looked at the financial system, went, why am I trusting these guys? Who actually in charge of my money? Well, great questions. I grew up in Russia, so skepticism has built up over generations. In the last 100 years, we had monarchy, communism, democracy, the same president for 20 years. So the trust for government has flew out of the window a while ago. And this distrust in government has been installed in me deeply since very young age. By the time I was 20, I've seen 2 hyperinflations in my country. So the rubles were losing value faster than you could spend them. You could use them as a wallpaper at some point. So all these things was obviously prepared me to be a Bitcoiner. So it was only a matter of time until I actually learned enough to become a Bitcoiner. Well, after that, we got the skepticism out of the way. Let's go to first principles thinking. This is the fun part. You realize, okay, I don't need permission to hold my own assets. I don't need a bureaucrat. What do I actually need to keep my value in things that I control? Well, just a wallet and the system that doesn't care about anything, honestly. So all those tricks we learn along the way with Bitcoin and also decentralized action, right? You are the node, you are the wallet. Great. So let's get wild and put the same principles into the health. Okay, when it comes to health, just like in finance system, currently we have this system where the principles are not aligned. The incentives are completely misplaced, especially when you get insurance companies into play, right? So we have this triangle, which I really like to bring some psychology into the play. There is this thing called drama triangle or toxic triangle. And I highly recommend you to look further into the drama triangle, because then you will actually start catching yourself falling into one of those little things in your day-to-day life. But this drama triangle perfectly fits into the whole insurance versus provider versus you, right? There's always a victim, there's always a rescuer, and there's always a persecutor. So if you go through life and you start applying this drama triangle, you will see yourself falling into one of these three rules. But in health, mostly, you're the victim, you need the help. You come to the provider, you now, in a position of victim, you can't see straight. You right away see your provider as a savior, so you put this on a pedestal. And then there's the insurance who says, oh, that was actually your fault. He did right, he did wrong. So that's the role of a persecutor. All right, so we're going to stay with health. Let's go into first principles. So what does my body actually need to thrive? What are the problems that bother me? And most importantly, what is the root cause of these problems? Usually, this first principle is never actually addressed in your 15-minute appointment with your MD, et cetera, et cetera. So just my example again, I'm not trying to tell you the truth, like this is the final truth and no, don't question it anymore. We're here on the workshop. So I'll give you my example. I do really well with numbers. Things just make sense when there are statistics. So many years ago, I discovered functional medicine. I get 150 blood-based biomarkers done every 6 months. I've been doing it for over 6 years now. I have daily notes that I take on my well-being. I monitor my sleep, my women's cycle. And I really try to do a lot of pattern recognition when it comes to my health and tweak things here and there and notice what has changed. So the blood-based biomarkers give me a very good baseline. And as I make lifestyle changes over time, I try to optimize my blood work from every 6 months to what I believe is optimal. One thing to mention, if you look at traditional recommended optimal ranges for your blood work, it's way wider because the traditional mainstream optimized for the sickest. So in Western medicine, an example, the Stardust TSH thyroid reference is like from 0.4 to 4.5. In functional medicine, the same biomarker is optimal from 1 to 2.5. So if you're really trying to optimize not for the sickest and not be an average on American diet, look into functional medicine and start applying, like you probably done your blood work with your MD at some point. Look through the same numbers, but from the functional medicine standpoint. So this whole action for me gives me the necessary data to own my own health, right? I'm no longer relying on somebody. I decided that this numbers is what I'm going to try to work with. So I take those numbers and I seek truths further on how I can optimize my numbers. So we already talked about first principles. What about the decentralization standpoint? Here, I really want to take parallels with self-custody versus exchange. In this community, we often say, not your keys, not your coin, right? So when you engage with a centralized exchange, let's say Coinbase, you realize that there are risks. You realize you can't just move your money. You need permission from those running the company. They set rules. They get to decide. And that's the risk you work with when you go for a centralized exchange. So I truly feel the same way when it comes to hospitals. The moment I step through the door of the hospital, I know my rights are out of the window. I'm on their soil, therefore they get to run the show. So now that being said, we still use exchanges, right? Like we still realize that it's the most convenient way to DCA. Maybe not Coinbase, there are way better options there, just saying. But it's the best way to DCA. It's probably the fastest way to buy the DEEP than to run to your friend across the street who is not going to sell you the DEEP anyway. So the product market fit is clearly there. And same goes for modern medicines and hospital. There is time and place for those. However, once you understand the risks of centralizations, you need to fully decide where is this line that you're drawing for yourself. For what are you willing to give up your self-custody? In what situation you are willing to step through this door of a hospital? So I've used this metaphor before in my other speeches, if you guys heard any. There's another definition from the world of psychology, definition of a word crisis. So crisis is a moment where you cannot, a situation or an event in which an individual in a state of disruption of their normal functioning, right? So you can't think properly in a moment of crisis. You can't make decision properly in a moment of crisis. So the state of psychological disequilibrium, as they say. So as a mom of 2 young children, I've lived through a couple of moments like that. Definitely when in a moment of crisis, I just want somebody to come and help me, to come and save my children. And that's been really hard to draw that line, to take that risk and say, no, that's not the moment where we go and give up our self-custody and give the show to the hospital. I still can handle it. I know I'm in a moment of crisis, so I need to think properly. So the more you prepare, the further that line is, as you know how to mitigate those risks here and there. Okay, next one. I know the BitBlockBoom crowd is always heavily male dominated. But what I learned, I ran a few events before and I brought up this topic. Seems like that's very interesting to you guys. So I'm going to bring it up again. We're going to talk about home birth. Let's try to apply again skepticism, first principles, decentralized action, and few other concepts that I grew up from Bitcoin and bring it to home birth. So why is a hospital assembly line necessary for birth? Who says it has to be this way? Let's look into history, right? Birth has not always been a medical event. Up until quite recently, it was a simple physiological event and worked without hospitals. Okay, so we questioned that. Now, before I go into that, this is a triggering topic. I want to say that yes, many women used to die in childbirth, and many women have been saved by modern medicine. But that doesn't mean that everyone benefits from it. And again, metaphor from Bitcoin world. If my grandfather, who is in his mid-80s, cannot figure out self-custody, it doesn't mean we all have to go give up our custody and go trust the banks, right? That being said, as you look into that, you realize that all you really need for birth is 2 people, the woman that gives birth and the babies that is being born. Now let's question a few things further. What about monitoring, putting monitors? Did you understand what I said? Monitoring. I can't say this word. There is nothing harmful in simply putting somebody on the monitor, right? So in childbirth, there's this concept called cascade of interventions, and I really want to point that out. Cascade of interventions is a series of medical interventions that can occur during childbirth, where one intervention leads to another, potentially resulting in an escalated sequence of events. You can probably notice the same with dental work. You do a little dental work, it requires more dental work, and then it requires more dental work. So same goes for childbirth. Imagine a woman, low-risk pregnancy. She goes into labor naturally. Well, okay, it's time to go to the hospital. Let's pack the bag. Let's drop off a dog. Let's drop off other kids at grandparents. What's next? Let's get in a car. Let's drive through traffic. Okay, we finally ended up at the hospital. All the stress is now stalling the labor. So the doctors who's on the shift, who wants to keep things moving, says, let's go for Pitocin. Let's escalate the labor a little bit. Let's help you move forward in the labor. Well, Pitocin starts in. The thing says escalate so quickly the body was not ready for that. Now the woman can't handle the pain. She asks for epidural, right? So they put a huge needle in her back. Now she can't feel anything from the waist down. Time to push. She doesn't know if she's able to because she can't feel anything. And all these things end up in a C-section simply because it was small events that kept one after another. And now we're at unnecessary C-section, which is way harder to recover from than a natural physiological birth. All right, so what about painkillers, you'll ask? Well, epidural anesthesia, right? Here I can give you a very precise parallel with Bitcoin. Are you guys familiar with low time preference versus high time preference, right? Well, for reference, low time preference is prioritizing long-term benefits over immediate gratification. And the high time preference is the opposite. So I truly believe that this is what epidural is an instant gratification. I bet women feel immediate relief. They're completely numb from waist down. But pain in labor is a feature and not a bug. What I mean is that that's your body's way telling you what you need to do. In times when you have epidural, you again give up control for convenience. Just like with Bitcoin custody, you give up control for convenience. And now the doctor is the one telling you when to push. You have no control over your lower body. You're not sure what to do. And here you are, 3 hours of pushing instead of 10 minutes like it is in an unmedicated birth. It's a long road to recovery, tough postpartum, and that's the high time preference consequences. So how else can it be done in a decentralized manner? Well, you can do it at home. You can be your own node in your house. You can find the operational system that you want to run, aka the midwife that will control the situation and see what can be done, when is the right time to do that. With midwife, considering she's not covered by insurance, that's going to be a direct relationship. You know exactly who you're paying for. You're choosing from all the providers out there. And now the midwife is working for you, not for the insurance company, which is a truly free market. You have the loved ones around. You don't have to rush to the hospital. There is no stress. You have this beautiful golden hour with your baby right after you had the baby. Amazing experience. And I had both. I had the hospital birth and the home birth. There is nothing to compare. Obviously, the home birth has been amazing. All right, what else should we look into? Family. Raising kids with orange glasses. That's another thing. So let's turn those orange glasses on my family now, right? I have kids who are tiny for homeschooling yet. They're a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I'm yet fully decide how their schooling is going to look like. I learned not to overpromise, but I have looked into multiple opportunities of how I can decentralize the action on homeschooling, right? There are public school, which is the centralized exchange. Then there is private schools, which I guess would be a similar thing, maybe a reverse centralized exchange, which is better. But then you can also do homeschooling. You can do homeschooling co-ops. Like almost every city that I've ever lived in has a homeschooling co-op where parents will work together to make it more convenient. Because again, we would give up control for convenience, right? It's convenient to drop off a child at daycare, drop off a child at school, and pick him or her up years later. And again, let's try to apply first principle to that. What is the actual goal? I think a goal is basically the same for all of us. Happy children, curious, self-reliant humans, not the ones that just sit in a classroom for 6 hours, but the ones that can solve real problems of the real world. And yeah, the decentralized action here, I've been exploring different options for co-ops, etc. Then we can look into security. If you guys were in this room for the previous hour, you would already know that when it comes to security, there are digital security options like Start9, where you become this decentralized action, your own node. But then what about physical security? Obviously, physical security, depending on the threat, you may or may not be able to run your own node. One of the best things the government does is have the monopoly on violence. And I don't think anybody in a decentralized manner can withstand a state actor attack. But if you simply rely on cops when intruder comes into your house, well, for that one, there are a lot of different options. Usually have a name and a number. Talking about guns, obviously. And of course, like having the physical abilities will save you in lots of situations too, like learn martial arts, having better health, that's already will take care of your physical security. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is community. Moving from Russia at the age of 21 to the US, I came here, I had no family, I had no friends here. And thankfully, I discovered Bitcoin quickly after that. So at this point, I don't have friends in the fiat world. All my friends are orange-pilled with orange glasses on. But what I learned is when you build a community, you basically have to see Bitcoin network on a physical level. You become a node and you choose the rules on which you run. For me, it's anarchy, I'd say. So I'm this true anarchy node, and I start connecting. You can't force anarchy on others, right? That's the whole point of anarchy. You can only opt in. It's voluntaristic mindset. So I'm an anarchy node. I know that I truly run my operational system that I truly believe in. Well, now I start looking for other nodes to connect that run the same system. And that's how I get girlfriends. That's how we can get family friends. If I realize at some point that somebody's running malicious node, that I unconnect. This is Bcash node. That's not the same set of rules. I'm out. So Bitcoin makes so much sense for me. I've been learning about Bitcoin for so many years that now I see everything in my life through Bitcoin glasses. My husband, I think, a little bit sick of constant Bitcoin metaphors about everything, but that's just how my mind thinks now. Like Bitcoin was my university. I discovered it at 22, and that's how I learned a lot of the adult world through the orange lens. So yeah, that's basically the workshop. And now I wanted to ask you guys, what is your one thing that you completely questioned after discovering Bitcoin and figured out a different way to apply it to? There you go, because now all the vacation go to BitBlockBoom and Bitcoin Vegas conference.
Yeah.
I understand that. I also had a question. Any of you guys been to my Underground Citadel event ever? Okay, so this whole workshop was basically a 30-minute thing that covered full day conference that used to be the day before BitBlockBoom. Every year we would work with Gary and we would have 12 speakers covering all these little topics. We would have a great tour guide for hunting. We would have a midwife talking, a homesteading people talking. There are passports right here. That would be me. That's my area of expertise. But yeah. Tell me about your rabbit holes. Go for it.
I would say first of all, going.
Yeah. So would you agree that it's like a constant work in progress and it's just layer after layer? You're like, okay, I got a gun. Oh, well, now I'm going to go to the range every Saturday. Oh, now I'm going to go into BJJ school and it's
When you are at all, and take responsibility said, not.
Yeah, a couple of examples I want to give. So I ended up in a hospital with my first baby. He was born early. And all I wanted is to scream like, shut up, you know nothing, you're doing everything wrong, get your hands off of me, etc. But then I also realized, well, this is not how they operate. And now I have to work with them to make sure I get the best I can. Because if I turn on my full on anarchy mode in the middle of the hospital, like I'm probably going to get mistreated. Like the human factor is still there. And you always have to take this into consideration. Another example, you come to school with your kids and they ask, so what's their vaccination status? You're not going to say, I'm anti-vax. You're going to say, we're behind the schedule. We're on a specific schedule, right? So you don't have to tell everybody about your principles of Bitcoin orange glasses. That's another strategy that you have to consider. Well, that's it, guys.
No, media.
Media, there you go.
So, now I pick their stuff that but talking.
Yeah, there you go. What do you use? Twitter? Yeah, Twitter is pretty good. Or then I'm in thousands of Telegram channel. That's why I can never answer to anybody on Telegram, because there's so many private news channels that try to cover things. And of course, they all steal information from each other, so it's not as decentralized as you wish. But yeah, Twitter has been way better at news cycle than whatever mainstream media has to provide. What are the ones that, food, right? You go to an HEB, whatever, you go to a store and you have no idea where your meat is coming from. You just trust whatever's on the label. Can you question it? Yes. Can you decentralize it? Yes. You guys probably heard of Beef Initiative. Go shake your farmer's hand. I know exactly who is my farmer, where I get my eggs from, where I get my meat from. I know name of his kids. I'm happy to see him every time at the Saturday farmer market. So that's another way where you know precisely your supply chain. It's short, is decentralized. It's not coming from 15,000 miles away, which makes no sense. What else do we have in a picture here? Hunting, pretty cool, self-sovereign way of getting food. Definitely worth learning. We're done? All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for coming. Before I do something. Well, appreciate you all being here. I'm Katie the Russian on Twitter. Appreciate all the tags. Again, I didn't mention much about my business, but I sell passports. So another way to limit your dependency on any one particular state is by obtaining second citizenship or residency. So if you were ever need anything along this way, planbpassport.com. There you go. Thank you.